My name is Nora, and the night my husband locked me out of his BMW in the middle of a Category 2 storm should have been the end of my story. Graham drove away on that dark river road, leaving me soaked and shivering, convinced he was teaching me a lesson about consequences. But when those headlights appeared through the rain, everything changed. The man who stepped out of that matte black SUV knew my name, knew exactly where to find me, and his arrival would unravel everything my husband had been planning for months. If you are watching this video right now, I would love to know where you are from. Drop it in the comment section below. Hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories about family relationships that take unexpected turns. The leather-bound journal lived beneath a false bottom in Nora Hale's desk drawer at the nonprofit she'd helped build from nothing. Each entry, written in her precise handwriting, documented another standard her husband Graham had established over their 4 years of marriage. Tuesday, must text location every 2 hours during conferences. Wednesday, donor lunch canceled. Graham said my dress was trying too hard. Friday, changed passwords on joint accounts. Says it's for security. She closed the journal and slipped it back into its hiding place, her fingers lingering on the drawer's smooth wood. Outside her office window, storm clouds gathered over the city, matching the tension that had been building in her chest for weeks. Tonight was the Harrington Foundation Gala, the kind of event where Graham's logistics company could secure contracts worth millions, and where her presence as his wife was not requested but required. "You ready for tonight?" Her assistant, Maya, poked her head through the door, holding Nora's garment bag. "As ready as one can be for these things," Nora replied, taking the bag. Inside was the navy dress Graham had approved, conservative neckline, appropriate length, nothing that might draw attention away from him. She'd started creating digital breadcrumbs 3 weeks ago, after she'd caught Graham accessing her personal email. Screenshots saved to a cloud account he didn't know existed. Voice memos recorded on a burner phone she kept in her car. She wasn't planning anything specific, just building a safety net, the way someone might keep emergency cash hidden in various places around the house. The drive home took her past Graham's office building, its gleaming facade reflecting the darkening sky. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the third-floor conference room, she could see him gesturing animatedly at someone. Victor Lang, his business partner, stood opposite him, his body language aggressive even from this distance. She'd met Victor only a handful of times, each encounter leaving her with the distinct feeling of being assessed like inventory. At home, Graham was already in his tuxedo, adjusting his cufflinks in the hallway mirror. "You're late," he said without looking at her. "Traffic. The storm's moving in faster than expected." "Then you should have left earlier." He turned, his eyes scanning her from head to toe. "Wear the pearl earrings, not the gold ones you picked. And do something about your hair. It's too casual." 40 minutes later, they sat in his BMW as rain began to spatter the windshield. The wipers squeaked against the glass in a rhythm that seemed to match her accelerated heartbeat. The gala had been a minefield of careful smiles and measured responses. She'd navigated it perfectly until the moment with Marcus Harrington. The shipping containers from Malaysia arrived ahead of schedule. Graham had been telling the foundation's chairman, his voice carrying that confident tone he used when embellishing. "Saved the client nearly $300,000 in storage fees." "I thought the savings report showed $150," Nora had said quietly, remembering the document she'd helped him proofread just last week. The silence that followed lasted only seconds, but she felt it stretch like pulled taffy. Graham's hand found the small of her back, fingers pressing just hard enough to convey warning through the fabric of her dress. "You're right, darling," he'd said smoothly. $150 in direct fees, but the indirect savings pushed it higher. His laugh was perfectly calibrated, just self-deprecating enough. "She keeps me honest, this one." But in the car now, with the rain intensifying and the city lights blurring past, his mask had dropped entirely. "You embarrassed me," he said, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. "In front of the most important client we've ever had." "I was trying to help. If Marcus had checked the numbers later, that's not your job." His voice was ice. "Your job is to smile, to charm, to make me look good, not to fact-check me like some junior analyst." The rain was coming down in sheets now, turning the windshield into a waterfall despite the wipers' frantic efforts. Graham took the exit for River Road, the winding route that followed the old Potomac corridor. It would add 20 minutes to their journey home, but he often chose it after events, claiming he needed the drive to decompress. Graham, the weather. Maybe we should take the highway. I decide which way we go. He pressed harder on the accelerator, the BMW's engine responding with a low growl. You need to learn that actions have consequences, Nora. Real consequences. The trees on either side of the road bent in the wind, their branches whipping across the sky like frantic signals. Nora's phone buzzed in her purse, a weather alert probably, but she didn't dare check it. Graham hated when she looked at her phone during his lectures. You think you're so clever, he continued, taking a curve faster than safe, the tires sliding slightly on the wet asphalt. With your little corrections and your helpful additions. But you're nothing without me. Your nonprofit? It only succeeds because of my connections. Your reputation? Built on being Mrs. Graham Hale. She'd heard variations of this speech before, but tonight there was something different in his tone. Something final. The BMW suddenly decelerated, pulling toward the narrow shoulder. Through the rain-blurred window, she could barely make out the steep embankment that dropped toward the swollen river below. Graham put the car in park, but left the engine running, the headlights cutting futile cones through the storm. Get out, he said quietly. What? You need to learn consequences. He reached across her and unlocked her door. Get out and find your own way home. Graham, it's dangerous, the storm. Out. His hand shot past her, pushing the door open. Rain immediately invaded the car's interior, cold and shocking. For a moment, she considered refusing. But the look in his eyes, she'd seen it only once before, the night he'd grabbed her wrist hard enough to leave bruises she'd covered with makeup for 2 weeks. She grabbed her purse and stepped out into the storm. The door slammed shut behind her. Through the water streaming down her face, she watched the BMW's taillights disappear around the next bend, leaving her in darkness broken only by occasional lightning flashes. She stood there for a full minute, rain soaking through her coat, her dress, everything. Her phone was already wet when she pulled it out, no signal. Of course. River Road was notorious for dead zones. But she wasn't panicking. Instead, she looked at her watch, the waterproof one she'd started wearing 3 weeks ago, and noted the time, 10:47 p.m. Then she began walking toward the mile marker she'd spotted in the last lightning flash, her heels sinking into the muddy shoulder with each step. She'd walked maybe 50 yards when headlights appeared behind her, moving slowly, deliberately. Not Graham. These lights were higher, the engines sound different. The vehicle, a matte black SUV, pulled alongside her and stopped. The driver's door opened, and a man stepped out, moving with the kind of controlled purpose that came from military training. He held an umbrella, though the wind immediately tried to claim it. Mrs. Hale, Darian Cole said, his voice calm despite the chaos around them. Ready to go? She looked at him, this man she'd hired in secret 3 weeks ago after finding Graham's forged signature on a power of attorney document. The ex-Secret Service agent she'd paid in cash to be her insurance policy. I'm ready, she said. He guided her to the passenger side, his hand hovering protectively near her elbow without quite touching. Professional, respectful. The interior of the SUV was warm, quiet, a sanctuary from the storm. As she settled into the heated leather seat, Darian handed her a towel and a thermos of tea. How did you know? She asked as he pulled back onto the road. I've been tracking your phone since you texted me from the gala bathroom, he said. When I saw you heading to River Road in this weather, I followed at distance. Graham's patterns are predictable. He always uses isolation as punishment. You've been watching him? I've been watching everything. It's what you hired me to do. He glanced at her in the rear-view mirror. The townhouse is ready. Secure, off-grid, untraceable. Piper's already there setting up the surveillance countermeasures. Piper Lynn, the cyber forensics expert Darian, had brought onto the team. Nora had met her only once, A brief encounter in a coffee shop where the woman had demonstrated in 30 seconds how much of Nora's digital life was visible to anyone who knew where to look. "I need to text Graham," Nora said. "He needs to think I got home." "Already thought of that." Darian handed her a phone, not her regular one. "This one bounces the signal off cell towers near your house. As far as anyone tracking you knows, you made it home." She typed quickly, "I got home safe." The response came within seconds. "Good. You're learning." She screenshotted it, then opened an encrypted app she didn't recognize. "What's this?" Secure cloud storage. Everything you document goes there: texts, photos, voice recordings. Triplicate backups. Internationally distributed servers. Even if Graham finds one copy, he can't touch the others. The townhouse was in a quiet neighborhood 40 minutes from their usual haunts. Nora had expected something cold, utilitarian. Instead, she found a warm, furnished space that felt like a high-end hotel suite. Piper Lynn sat at a desk surrounded by multiple monitors, her fingers flying across a keyboard. "Mrs. Hale," Piper said, standing. "Tea's ready, fresh clothes in the bedroom, and I've already started the security audit on your devices." "Security audit?" Piper turned one of the monitors toward her. On the screen was a detailed map of tracking software. "This was installed on your phone 6 weeks ago. Every text, every call, every location. Graham's been watching it all. But here's the interesting part." She clicked to another screen. "He used his company IP address to install it." Sloppy. Or arrogant. Either way, it's documented. Nora sank into a chair, the weight of the evening finally hitting her. "I knew he was controlling. But tracking software?" "There's more," Darian said, joining them. "That power of attorney document you found? It's part of a larger pattern. Piper's been digging into Graham's financial movements." Piper pulled up another screen. 3 weeks ago, he tried to add himself as sole beneficiary to your life insurance policy. The attempt was flagged by the insurance company because the signature didn't match. "But look at this." She highlighted a section of code. "He's been researching accident statistics. Specifically, single-car accidents in adverse weather conditions." The teacup trembled in Nora's hands. "You think tonight was a test run," Darian finished. "Create a pattern of you being difficult. Establish a narrative of marital problems. Then when something happens, he's the grieving widower who tried so hard to make things work. But he let me out of the car." "He didn't." "Tonight wasn't the finale," Piper said gently. "Tonight was about breaking you down, making you desperate enough to come back apologetic, compliant. The kind of wife who might agree to take a dangerous drive to work things out." Nora set down the teacup and pulled out her phone, her real one, now safe to use in this protected space. She opened the voice memo app and played the recording she'd started the moment Graham began his lecture in the car. His voice filled the room. "You need to learn consequences. You're nothing without me." "You recorded him?" Darian's expression showed the first hint of approval she'd seen from him. "I've been recording everything for 3 weeks," she said. "Every threat, every controlling moment, every time he's grabbed me just a little too hard. I knew something was building. I just didn't know what." She stopped the recording just before the part where he'd ordered her out of the car. That felt too raw to share yet. But she forwarded the file to the encrypted cloud storage, watching it upload with a small sense of satisfaction. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now we build your case," Darian said. "Document everything, establish patterns, create an exit strategy that ensures your safety and preserves your assets." "And Graham?" "Graham just made his first real mistake," Piper said. "He created evidence of abandonment in dangerous conditions. That's assault in some jurisdictions, definitely grounds for divorce with cause." Nora stood, exhaustion finally overtaking adrenaline. "I need to think. Process all of this." "Take your time," Darian said. "You're safe here. Graham thinks you're home, probably assumes you're crying in the bedroom. He won't check on you. That would require him to care." As Nora headed to the bedroom, she paused at the doorway. "That tracking software, can we use it?" Piper smiled. "Already ahead of you. I've cloned it. He'll keep seeing what we want him to see." Your phone will show you at home, at work, living your normal routine. Meanwhile, you'll be building your new life right under his nose. In the bedroom, Nora found clothes laid out, jeans, a soft sweater, nothing Graham would have approved of. She changed slowly, each piece of designer clothing she removed feeling like shedding skin. In the mirror, she looked different. Not because of the casual clothes, but because of something in her eyes. Determination, maybe. Or just the absence of fear. She pulled out the burner phone she'd hidden in her purse's inner pocket and opened the voice recorder. October 15th, 11:52 p.m., she said quietly. Graham left me on River Road in a Category 2 storm. I walked for approximately 1/4 mile before my security consultant extracted me. I am now in a safe location. Graham does not know where I am. This is day 1 of my exit strategy. She saved the file and uploaded it to the encrypted cloud. Then she lay on the bed, still fully clothed, and listened to the storm outside. But this time she was warm, safe, protected. The storm could rage all it wanted. It couldn't touch her here. The law offices of Sloan Hart occupied a discreet brownstone in Georgetown, the kind of place that whispered power rather than shouting it. Nora sat across from the attorney, watching her review the documents Piper had compiled over the past 3 days, screenshots, audio files, financial records, each one meticulously cataloged and cross-referenced. The prenup is actually going to work in your favor, Sloan said, her manicured finger tracing a particular clause. Graham insisted on this abandonment and cruelty clause, thinking he'd use it against you someday. But legal abandonment includes leaving a spouse in dangerous conditions without means of transport or communication. He'll say I could have called an Uber, Nora said. From a dead zone in a Category 2 storm? Sloan smiled, the expression sharp as a blade. I'd love to see him try that argument in court. But we need more than just that night. Pattern of behavior. Mrs. Hale. Shows intent, not impulse. Piper looked up from her laptop. About that pattern, I've reconstructed the last 6 months. She turned the screen toward them. January. Graham canceled Nora's credit cards while she was at a conference in Seattle, claiming suspicious activity. She had to borrow money from colleagues to get home. March. He left her at a restaurant 40 miles outside the city after an argument, told her to think about her priorities while finding her own way back. April. Nora added quietly, he donated my car to charity while I was visiting my mother. Said it was too flashy for a nonprofit director. May. Piper continued, he filed a missing person report when Nora didn't answer her phone for 3 hours during a donor site visit. Police showed up at the children's shelter she was touring. Sloane's expression darkened with each revelation. This is systematic degradation. He's been deliberately destabilizing your autonomy, creating a pattern of dependency while simultaneously painting you as unreliable. It gets worse, Darian said from his position by the window. He'd been silent until now, maintaining his security watch even in the lawyer's office. I pulled traffic cam footage from River Road. He handed Sloan a tablet showing grainy but clear footage. The timestamp read 10:47 p.m. In the frame, Graham's BMW was visible on the shoulder, Nora getting out, the car driving away. Another angle showed her walking in the storm, soaked and struggling against the wind. There's also this, Darian added, swiping to another video. Dashcam footage from a delivery truck that passed right after Graham left. Driver didn't stop. Storm was too bad, but his cam caught Graham's license plate and speed. He was doing 60 in a 30 zone in those conditions. Reckless endangerment, Sloan murmured. This is good. This is very good. But Graham's not stupid. He's going to counterattack. We need to be ready. As if on cue, Nora's phone, the one Piper had modified to show false location data, buzzed with a text from Graham. Where are you? You weren't at work today. Nora looked at Piper, who nodded. You were there. The phone says you were there. He must have sent someone to check physically. She typed back, in my office. Door closed. Headache. I'm sending Dr. Morrison to check on you. Dr. Morrison, Graham's golf buddy, a psychiatrist who'd once casually suggested Nora might benefit from mood stabilizers after she'd disagreed with Graham at a dinner party. Don't go to work, Sloan advised. Let him escalate. Document everything. 20 minutes later, Nora's assistant Maya called, her voice worried. Mr. Hale just called. He says you're sick and need to come home immediately. He's sending a car. Tell him I already left for a doctor's appointment, Nora said. My own doctor. He seemed really insistent. Maya, has anyone else called asking about me? A pause. Actually, yes. Someone from the police department called this morning.
Sergeant something.
Asked if you'd seemed distressed lately. Nora's blood chilled. What did you tell him? Nothing. I said you were the most level-headed person I knew. But Nora, what's going on? I'll explain everything soon. For now, document any unusual calls or visits, okay? After hanging up, Darian was already on his phone. Sergeant Klein, he said after a brief conversation. Been on the force 18 years, plays golf at Graham's Country Club. 3 complaints of excessive force, all mysteriously dropped. Graham's building a narrative, Sloan said. Mental health crisis, possibly danger to herself or others. Classic gaslighting, but with a legal framework. We need to move faster. The next morning, Nora arrived at her office to find chaos. Her email had been flooded with messages from board members, all responding to an anonymous tip about financial irregularities in the nonprofit's accounts. The accusations were vague but damaging, implications of misused donor funds, questionable expense reports. This has Victor Lang written all over it, Piper said, tracing the email headers. Sent from a burner account, but the digital signature matches his assistant's computer. Nora called an emergency board meeting, arriving with Sloan and a forensic accountant. The room was tense, board members avoiding eye contact. But Nora had learned from Graham, never show weakness when attacked. I assume you've all seen the anonymous accusations, she began, standing rather than sitting. I welcome a full audit. In fact, I insist on it. Sloan has already engaged an independent firm to review 5 years of records. That seems excessive, Harold Winters, the board chair, said uncomfortably. Graham had brought Harold onto the board 2 years ago. Transparency is never excessive, Nora replied, unless someone has something to hide. The audit would find nothing, she knew. She'd run the nonprofit with scrupulous attention to detail, partly from integrity, partly because she'd always suspected Graham might one day weaponize any mistake against her. That afternoon, while reviewing security footage with Darian, they noticed something odd. A matte black SUV, identical to Darian's, had been photographed outside Graham's office building. That's not mine, Darian said, zooming in on the plates. But someone wants it to look like mine. Victor's trying to flip the script, Piper realized. Make it look like you're stalking Graham, not protecting Nora. 2 days later, the escalation continued. Darian was pulled over by Sergeant Klein on a routine traffic stop. Nora was in the passenger seat, returning from meeting with Sloan. License and registration, Klein said, his hand resting on his weapon despite the routine nature of the stop. Darian complied calmly, his body camera, disguised as a button, recording everything. Mrs. Hale, are you here of your own free will? Klein asked, leaning down to look at her. Of course. Mr. Cole is my security consultant. Security from what? Klein's tone was probing. From whoever's been sending anonymous threats to my workplace, Nora replied smoothly. I assume that's why you're so concerned for my safety, Sergeant. Klein's jaw tightened. Mr. Cole, step out of the vehicle. I need to contact my attorney first, Darian said, already dialing Sloan and putting her on speaker. Sergeant Klein. Sloan's voice was crisp through the phone. Is my client under arrest? No, but... Then this voluntary interaction is concluded. Unless you have probable cause? Klein stepped back, his face red. You might want to be careful, Mrs. Hale. Your protector here is making you look guilty of something. Of what, exactly? Nora asked innocently. Klein walked away without answering, but the threat hung in the air. That evening, an unexpected ally emerged. Elise Mora, a junior accountant at Graham's company, sent Nora a message through LinkedIn. Can we meet? Library on 5th Street. Important. Nora went, with Darian watching from a distance. Elise was young, nervous, her hands shaking as she pushed a flash drive across the table. "I shouldn't be doing this," Elise whispered. "But what they're planning, it's not just wrong, it's illegal." "What's on the drive?" "Cargo insurance files. Your signature appears on authorizations you never signed. But that's not the worst part." Elise pulled out a printed document. "This is a life insurance rider Mr. Lang had me process. It's in your name, with Graham as beneficiary. Double indemnity for accidental death." Nora's hands were steady as she read the document, but her mind raced. When was this filed? 2 weeks ago. But here's the thing, it's specifically for vehicular accidents during severe weather events. Mr. Lang laughed when he filed it, said something about storm season starting early this year. "Why are you telling me this?" Elise met her eyes. "Because last year, my sister's ex-husband took out a similar policy. She died in a car accident 3 months later. The brake lines had been cut, but they could never prove it. I won't watch it happen again." Nora reached across the table and squeezed Elise's hand. "You're brave. This will help save my life." "There's more. They have a partner's retreat scheduled next week. Out of state. Mr. Lang already booked her ticket." Back at the safe house, Piper analyzed the documents while Darian paced, his usual calm cracked. "This is attempted murder conspiracy," he said. "We need to go to the FBI." "With what?" Sloane countered. "Circumstantial evidence and the testimony of a junior accountant who's probably already regretting talking to us. Graham's lawyers will tear it apart." "So, we let them continue?" Darian's voice was sharp. "No," Nora said quietly. "We let them think they're continuing, but we'll be 3 steps ahead." She stood, moving to the window where rain had started to fall again, gentler this time, but still present. "Graham taught me that actions have consequences. He just never considered that his actions might have some too." "What are you thinking?" Piper asked. "I'm thinking about that retreat. About how Graham will insist I attend, frame it as reconciliation. He'll have witnesses to our renewed happiness right before my tragic accident." "You can't seriously be considering going," Darian said. "Oh, I'm going," Nora said, turning back to face them. "But not as the victim Graham expects. I'm going as the woman who's about to expose everything." She looked at each of them, her unlikely team, assembled in crisis but bonded by purpose. "He locked me out in a storm, thinking he'd broken me. Instead, he gave me clarity. And now we're going to show him what a real storm looks like." Sloane smiled, predatory and pleased. "Then we'd better start preparing. The forecast calls for severe weather." Outside, lightning flickered across the sky, illuminating the room for a brief moment. In that flash, Nora saw herself reflected in the window, no longer the woman who'd stood soaking on River Road just days ago. This woman was different, prepared, ready. The storm was coming, but this time, she would be the one controlling it. Piper's workspace had transformed into a war room. Multiple monitors displayed weather patterns, insurance documents, and Graham's calendar, all overlaid with timestamps that told a chilling story. She pointed to a visualization she'd created, connecting data points with red lines that looked like a spider's web. The insurance rider was purchased 6 days before the first practice run on River Road, she explained, her finger tracing the timeline. Graham's calendar shows 3 date-night drives scheduled along that route in the week before the storm. Each one corresponds with severe weather warnings. Nora studied the pattern, her analytical mind processing what her heart didn't want to accept. He was hunting for the right conditions. "Testing your reactions," Darian added from where he stood reviewing security protocols. "Seeing how you'd respond to escalating danger, whether you'd fight back or freeze. The probability model suggests an 87% likelihood of premeditation," Piper continued, pulling up another screen. "But here's what's interesting. Victor Lang's financial footprint appears at every crucial junction. He's not just enabling Graham, he's architecting this." Sloane looked up from her legal pad, where she'd been sketching strategy. "We need them to reveal themselves publicly. Right now, everything we have could be explained away by good lawyers as coincidence and misunderstanding." The logistics gala, Nora said suddenly. It's tomorrow night. Graham can't skip it. Too many contracts at stake. And Victor will be there. You want to walk into their territory? Darian's disapproval was evident. I want to flip their script, Nora corrected. They expect me to hide, to cower. Instead, I show up with my head high, with you as my security consultant, publicly, professionally. Let them wonder what I know. Sloane leaned forward, interested. And if they approach you? Then we'll be ready. Nora turned to Piper. Can you wire me? Already have equipment, Piper said, producing a device no larger than a button. Military-grade, court-admissible audio quality. Uploads directly to our encrypted servers in real time. The next evening, Nora stood before the mirror in the safe house, adjusting the deep burgundy dress she'd chosen. Nothing Graham had ever seen, nothing he would have approved. It was elegant but bold, the color of wine and warning. Darian appeared behind her, holding the tiny microphone. This goes under the collar, he said, his fingers precise and professional as he secured it. The battery lasts 6 hours. Everything you hear, we hear. You choose the line you won't cross, he added, meeting her eyes in the mirror. If things escalate. No violence, Nora said firmly. No traps he can spin. Only truth. The gala was held at the Meridian Hotel's ballroom, a glittering cave of crystal chandeliers and calculated smiles. Nora entered with Darian 2 steps behind her, his presence drawing immediate attention. She saw Graham across the room, his face cycling through surprise, rage, and then, most tellingly, fear, before settling into his public mask. Darling, he said, approaching with arms spread as if nothing had happened. I wasn't sure you'd make it. I never miss a commitment, Nora replied, accepting his air kiss while keeping her body angled away. You know that about me. Graham's eyes flicked to Darian. And you brought security? Given the recent anonymous threats at my office, it seemed prudent. You understand safety first. She smiled, letting him hear his own words echoed back. Victor Lang materialized from the crowd like smoke taking form, his cologne preceding him, something expensive and somehow predatory. Nora, lovely as always. Might I steal you for a moment? Graham, you don't mind? Graham's jaw tightened, but he nodded. This was planned, Nora realized. They were separating her from Darian. Victor guided her toward the coat check area, a quieter corner where the music dimmed and the shadows grew longer. His hand on her elbow was just shy of painful. You've been causing problems, he said quietly, his breath too close to her ear. Poor Graham is beside himself. His wife, running around with some mercenary, spreading lies. I haven't spread anything, Victor. The truth has a way of spreading itself. He turned her to face him, backing her against the coat check counter. From across the room, it would look like intimate conversation. But Nora could see Darian's reflection in the mirror behind Victor, watching, ready. You made him do things, Victor purred, his voice oil smooth. Pushed him to extremes with your constant defiance. And now you'll make them right. He slid a USB drive across the counter. Everything you need is on here. A reconciliation statement, withdrawal of any complaints, and a new insurance arrangement that's more equitable. Sign it all tonight, and this ends peacefully. Nora palmed the drive, knowing Piper would want to analyze it. And if I don't, then Graham becomes a widower far sooner than anyone expects. Grief makes men do terrible things, Nora. Sometimes they can't even remember the details clearly afterward. The threat was naked now, recorded in perfect clarity by the wire she wore. But Victor wasn't done. He leaned closer, and she smelled whiskey on his breath. You think that guard dog you hired will protect you? We've already started the narrative. Unstable woman, seduced by dangerous man, tragic ending. The police are primed to believe it. Mrs. Hale? Darian's voice cut through, professional and calm. Your presence is requested at the silent auction. Victor stepped back, his smile sharp. Think about it, Nora. You have until midnight. As they walked away, Darian murmured, Piper caught all of that. She's already analyzing the USB remotely. You don't even need to plug it in. They had made it 10 feet before a new player entered the game. The woman was stunning in the way that expensive surgery and careful maintenance could achieve. Polished, perfect, and somehow reptilian. "You must be Nora," she said, extending a manicured hand. Imogen read, "I handle public relations for select clients." Nora knew the name. Imogen was the one who'd made Graham's college assault allegation disappear, who'd transformed accusers into troubled young women seeking attention. "I know who you are," Nora said, not taking the offered hand. Imogen's smile didn't waver. "Good. Then you know I'm very effective at what I do. Graham's asked me to help resolve this unfortunate situation." "There's no situation to resolve." "Oh, but there is." Imogen produced her phone, showing Nora a drafted press release. "Local nonprofit director suffers mental break. Husband seeks help." It's sympathetic, really. Positions Graham as the devoted spouse trying to save his troubled wife. No one will believe that. Won't they? Imogen swiped to another screen, social media posts, comments, all time-stamped for tomorrow, but somehow already gaining traction. Amazing what a few thousand bot accounts can do to shape narrative. By morning, everyone will be discussing your erratic behavior, your dangerous associations, your husband's heroic attempts to intervene. Nora felt the floor tilt slightly, not from fear, but from recognition. This was the full machine turning against her. Not just Graham's cruelty, but an entire apparatus designed to erase her truth. "You're not the story," Imogen continued, her voice almost hypnotic. "Graham is. The successful businessman, the generous philanthropist, the devoted husband failed by a woman who couldn't appreciate what she had. That's the story that sells, that people want to believe." Across the room, Nora caught sight of something that made her blood chill further. Graham was on the small stage, tapping the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention for our special auction item, a complete logistics package for disaster relief, conceptualized by my brilliant wife, Nora." The spotlight found her, pinning her like a butterfly to cork. Graham was binding her publicly to his company, making her complicit in whatever came next. But Nora had learned from watching Graham all these years. She moved toward the stage, Darian shadowing her, and took the secondary microphone. "Thank you, Graham, but I need to make a correction." Her voice carried clearly through the ballroom. "Yes, I do. Graham knows me. The real me would never miss that retreat. It would confirm every lie he's spreading about my mental state." She turned to face him. "But I need you to understand something. I'm not being self-destructive. I'm being strategic." Before Darian could respond, Piper called out urgently. "We have a problem. Klein just filed a report suggesting Darian might be holding you against your will. He's requesting a wellness check at your home address for tomorrow morning." "Let him," Nora said. "I'll be there." "That's not safe." "It's necessary. If I don't show up, it validates their narrative." She looked at Sloane. "Can you be there with me?" "Already planning on it," the lawyer said. "But Darian stays away. We can't risk an confrontation." The next morning, Nora stood in the home she'd shared with Graham for 4 years, every familiar object now feeling like evidence of a life built on lies. She'd arrived early, using her key, and was calmly making tea when the doorbell rang. Sergeant Klein stood on the doorstep with 2 other officers, his expression carefully neutral. "Mrs. Hale, we're conducting a wellness check. Your husband expressed concern." "How thoughtful of him," Nora said, stepping aside. "Please come in. Ms. Hart, my attorney, is here as well." Sloane emerged from the living room, her presence immediately shifting the dynamic. "Officers, I trust this won't take long. My client has a busy day." Klein's jaw tightened. "We need to speak with Mrs. Hale privately." "No, you don't," Sloane said smoothly. "Unless she's under arrest, I'm staying." As Klein questioned Nora about her whereabouts and state of mind, she noticed one of the other officers photographing the room with his phone, not standard procedure for a wellness check. "Are you documenting this officially?" she asked. The officer flushed. "Just being thorough." "Then you won't mind if I document it too." Nora pulled out her phone, making a show of recording. "For my protection, you understand." After 20 minutes of finding nothing actionable, Klein prepared to leave. At the door, he turned back. Your husband loves you, Mrs. Hale. Whatever that man Cole has told you. Mr. Cole is a licensed security professional I hired after receiving threats, Nora interrupted. Unless you're suggesting I shouldn't protect myself? Klein left without answering, but his parting look promised this wasn't over. As soon as they were gone, Sloane swept the house for bugs, finding 3, one in the bedroom, one in the kitchen, and one in Nora's home office. Legal? Nora asked. Not even close. But proving Graham planted them versus Klein? Sloane shook her head. This is escalating faster than I expected. That afternoon, Nora returned to her nonprofit to find chaos. Someone had leaked a video online, heavily edited footage from the gala showing her apparently talking to herself, gesturing at empty air. The parts with Darian had been expertly removed. Imogen's work, Piper confirmed, analyzing the video's metadata. Professional editing software, uploaded through a VPN, but she made one mistake. The rendering's signature matches her company's production suite. Maya, Nora's assistant, knocked tentatively. Nora? The board chair is here. He says it's urgent. Harold Winters sat in the conference room, his discomfort obvious. Nora, I've always respected you, but this situation, it's becoming untenable. What situation, Harold? Your husband called an emergency board meeting. He's offering to cover our funding gap for the next year, but he couldn't meet her eyes. He wants you to take a leave of absence. For your health. And if I refuse? Then he pulls all funding, including the matching donor program he orchestrated. Harold spread his hands helplessly. That's $3 million, Nora. We can't survive without it. This was Graham's masterstroke, weaponizing her own organization against her. But Nora had learned from the best. I'll take a leave, she said, watching Harold's relief. But I want it in writing that it's voluntary, temporary, and that I retain my position pending an independent review. Of course, whatever you need. And Harold, you might want to check the donor agreements. Graham's money comes with strings. Read the fine print about what happens if anything happens to me. Harold's face paled. You're not suggesting. I'm suggesting you read the contracts. All of them. That evening, an unexpected ally emerged stronger. Elise called from a burner phone, her voice shaking but determined. I've been recording them, she said. Victor and Graham. They don't know I upgraded the conference room system last month. It backs up to my personal cloud. Elise, that could be illegal. So is conspiracy to commit murder. I have Victor saying the River Road was just the first rehearsal. And Graham responding, the retreat will be the finale. Send everything to this number. Nora gave her Piper's secure upload site. Then get somewhere safe. Take a sick day, visit family, anything. Already packing. My sister lives in Colorado. I'll be on a plane tonight. Elise? Thank you. You're saving my life. Someone should have saved my sisters. Elise replied quietly. This is the least I can do. The countdown to the retreat accelerated. Graham texted constantly, oscillating between tender reconciliation and subtle threats. Missing you. The house feels empty. The retreat will be good for us. Fresh start. Don't disappoint me, Nora. Not again. Victor's worried about you. We all are. Each message was screenshot, analyzed, added to the growing file of evidence. 3 days before the retreat, Darian noticed increased surveillance. Cars that lingered too long outside the safe house. Drones that seemed too interested in their windows. They're getting desperate, he said, showing Nora the pattern analysis. This is either Graham or Klein, maybe both. Good, Nora said. Desperate people make mistakes. But that night, they discovered just how desperate Graham had become. Nora had returned to the house to pack for the retreat, maintaining the illusion, when she found the door slightly ajar. Nothing was disturbed, but on the kitchen table sat a glass of water with her wedding ring inside, the same ring she'd left in her jewelry box. That's a surveillance signature, Darian said when she called him. Special forces use similar markers. Someone wants you to know they can get to you anywhere. Check the cameras, Nora said, but she already knew what Piper would find. Wiped clean, Piper confirmed minutes later. Professional job. But they made one mistake. The white pattern matches law enforcement software. This was done from inside the system. Klein, Darian growled. More than Klein, Piper corrected. This required multiple access points. Graham has more than one cop in his pocket. The night before the retreat, the team met for final preparations. Sloan had filed sealed documents with the court, ready to be opened if anything happened to Nora. Piper had created multiple backups of all evidence, distributed across international servers. Darian had arranged for backup security, former colleagues who would shadow them to the retreat. You can still back out, Sloan said. We have enough to file for divorce, get a restraining order. And watch him do this to someone else? Nora shook her head. Graham doesn't learn from consequences he doesn't feel. Neither does Victor. Or Imogen. Or Klein. They all need to be stopped. She turned to Darian. You'll be in the surveillance van? Close enough to respond in 90 seconds. Piper will be monitoring everything, audio, video, vitals. He handed her a watch. This monitors your heart rate. If it spikes beyond normal parameters or stops transmitting, we come in. And if they've planned for that, then we've planned for their planning. He showed her a map of the resort. 3 extraction routes, 2 safe rooms, and local law enforcement has been notified, state police, not local. Klein won't know they're coming until they're there. The morning of departure, Graham arrived at the house in his BMW, all smiles and solicitude. You look beautiful, he said, leaning in to kiss her cheek. She noticed his cologne was different, something new, expensive. The cologne of a man starting fresh. The others are meeting us there, he said as they drove. Victor's bringing his new girlfriend. Someone you haven't met. How nice, Nora murmured, checking her phone. Piper had texted. We're with you. Every mile. The drive started normally, Graham chatting about inconsequential things, market reports, a new client, plans for renovating the kitchen. But as they left the city, his tone shifted. I know things have been difficult, he said, glancing at her. But this retreat will fix everything. You'll see. What needs fixing, Graham? His hands tightened on the wheel. Don't play games, Nora. You know what you've done. Running around with that thug, spreading lies, trying to destroy everything I've built. Everything we built, she corrected quietly. No. His voice was ice. I built it. You were just decoration. A necessary accessory. But accessories can be replaced. She recorded it all, the watch on her wrist capturing every word while monitoring her steady heartbeat. She wouldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing fear. As they approached the resort, she noticed the construction signs Piper had mentioned. The main road was indeed closed, forcing them onto the mountain pass. Graham took the turn without hesitation, accelerating despite the sharp curves and missing guardrails. Slow down, Nora said. Worried. He smiled, the expression cruel. You should have thought of that before you betrayed me. They climbed higher, the resort finally visible in the distance, a collection of elegant buildings perched on the mountainside. Other cars were already in the parking lot. Victor's Porsche, Imogen's Tesla, and 2 vehicles Nora didn't recognize. Welcome to your intervention, Graham said as he parked. Or your funeral. Really, it's up to you. Nora stepped out of the car, her phone vibrating with Darian's message. We see you. Stay strong. She looked at the resort, at Graham's smug face, at the gathering storm clouds above. They thought they had her trapped. They were wrong. Let's go, she said, walking toward the entrance. I'm curious to see how this ends. Graham followed, his hand possessive on her back. Oh, I already know how it ends. I always knew. From that first night on River Road, I knew exactly how your story would finish. Nora smiled, her hand touching the watch that connected her to her real protection. No, Graham. You only knew how you wanted it to end. But you forgot something important. What's that? I'm not just writing my own ending. I'm writing yours too. Thunder rumbled overhead as they entered the resort, the storm that had been building for weeks finally ready to break. The Mountain View Resort sprawled across the ridge like a predator at rest, its timber and glass architecture designed to blend with the landscape while dominating it. Graham's hand remained on Nora's back as they entered the lobby, his fingers pressing just hard enough to convey ownership to anyone watching. Victor stood by the massive stone fireplace, a young woman beside him who couldn't have been more than 25. Graham. Nora. So glad you could both make it. His smile was all teeth. This is Anastasia. She's helping with the restructuring. Anastasia's handshake was firm, her eyes sharp. Not a girlfriend then, another player in whatever game Victor was orchestrating. Your suite is ready, Victor continued. The Evergreen Room. Best views of the valley. Very private. The emphasis on private made Nora's skin crawl, but she kept her expression neutral. In her ear, through the nearly invisible earpiece Piper had provided, she heard Darian's voice. Evergreen is on the 3rd floor, north corner. 2 exits, balcony access. We've got eyes on all of them. The suite was luxurious. King bed, marble bathroom, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a dramatic drop to the valley below. Graham made a show of tipping the bellhop, playing the generous husband. As soon as they were alone, his mask dropped. Dinner's at 7. Wear the black dress. And Nora? He moved close, his cologne overwhelming. Don't embarrass me again. The consequences here would be immediate. After he left for his meeting with Victor, Nora quickly surveyed the room. 2 cameras, one in the smoke detector, one in the bathroom vent. She left them active. Let them think they were watching her. She changed into the black dress as instructed but added her own touch. The watch Darian had given her, disguised as elegant jewelry. At dinner, the full cast had assembled. Victor and Anastasia, Imogen in a white suit that made her look like a vengeful angel, 2 men Nora didn't recognize but whose bearing screamed private security, and Graham, presiding over it all like a king at his war council. A toast, Graham said, raising his glass. To new beginnings and permanent solutions. Everyone drank. Nora lifted her glass to her lips but didn't swallow, a trick she'd perfected at countless business dinners. The wine had a bitter undertone. Piper would want to test it later. Nora, Imogen said, her voice silk over steel. You look well. Graham was so worried about your episode at the gala. No episode, Nora replied calmly. Just a clarification. Clarity can be dangerous, Victor interjected. Sometimes it's better to see things through a softer lens. Less painful that way. The conversation continued in this vein, threats wrapped in concern, warnings disguised as small talk. Through it all, Nora maintained her composure, even as she felt the noose tightening. After dinner, Graham suggested a walk. The moon is beautiful tonight. Very romantic. They strolled along a path that wound toward the cliff edge, Graham's hand tight on her arm. The drop was at least 200 feet, nothing but jagged rocks below. Do you remember our honeymoon? He asked suddenly. That cliff-top restaurant in Santorini? I remember. You were so trusting then. So eager to please. He stopped at a viewing platform, the railing low enough to be concerning. What happened to that woman? She learned. Nora said simply. Graham's face darkened. Yes, you did learn. Just not the right lessons. He pulled out his phone, showing her a document. This is a psychiatric hold order. Dr. Morrison signed it. All I have to do is call, and you'll be committed for 72 hours. For your own safety, of course. You'd need cause. The video from the gala. Your erratic behavior at work. The testimony of concerned friends. He smiled. Or you could sign the reconciliation papers Victor gave you. Your choice. In her ear, Darian's voice was tight. 60 seconds if you need me. But Nora had a different plan. I'll sign, she said. But not here. In the room. I want to read everything first. Graham's triumph was obvious. Of course. Take all the time you need. We have until morning. Back in the suite, Nora opened the USB drive on her laptop. Not really, Piper was remotely accessing it, making it look like Nora was reviewing documents while actually analyzing the malware hidden within. Got it, Piper whispered through the earpiece. This would have given them complete access to your devices. But more importantly, I'm tracing its origin. Interesting. It was created on Victor's computer, but modified on a police department terminal. Klein's login. Graham poured himself a scotch, watching her with satisfaction. It's comprehensive. Covers everything. The insurance policies, the company assets, even your little nonprofit. All protected, all secure. Very thorough, Nora agreed, continuing to scroll through pages she wasn't really reading. A knock interrupted them. Victor entered without waiting for permission, Anastasia behind him. Graham, we need to discuss tomorrow's logistics. Not now. Yes, now. Victor's tone brooked no argument. There's been a development. They huddled by the window, voices low, but not low enough. Nora caught fragments. State police, asking questions, moved up timeline. Graham returned to her, his face tight. Sign it.
Now.
I haven't finished reading.
Now.
He slammed his hand on the table, making her laptop jump. She picked up the pen, her hand steady despite his looming presence. But instead of signing, she wrote something else. I know about the brake lines. Graham's face went white. What? The brake lines you're planning to cut. The sedatives in the wine. The psychiatric hold that's really a kidnapping. She stood, moving away from him. I know all of it, Graham. You're delusional. Am I? She pulled out her phone, playing Elise's recording. Victor's voice filled the room. After tomorrow, she's just an asterisk. Victor lunged for the phone, but Nora had already uploaded it. It's in the cloud. Multiple copies. Dead man's switch activated. If anything happens to me... You stupid bitch, Graham snarled. All pretense gone. You think you're clever? You think that thug you hired can protect you? I don't need protection, Nora said. I need witnesses. She pressed a button on her watch. Nothing visible happened, but she knew Piper had just activated every camera in the resort's security system, routing the feeds to their servers. It's over, Graham. Your conspiracy, your plans, all of it. Graham laughed, the sound unhinged. Over? Oh, Nora. It's just beginning. He moved toward her, and she saw his intention in his eyes. One push, one tragic accident, the grieving widower narrative intact. But she was ready. Graham Hale, she said clearly. Are you attempting to harm me? Harm you? He grabbed her arm, dragging her toward the balcony. I'm trying to help you. You're suicidal, remember? The note's already written. The balcony door slammed open, but it wasn't from Graham's hand. Darian stood there, having climbed from the room below, his presence shifting everything. Let her go, he said quietly. The hero arrives. Victor mocked, but his hand was moving toward his pocket. I wouldn't, Darian said. State police are already in the lobby. Your security team is in custody. And that weapon you're reaching for? It's on 12 different cameras right now. The sound of sirens became audible, growing closer. Graham's grip on Nora loosened, his face cycling through rage, fear, and finally, desperate calculation. It's her word against mine, he said. I have resources, lawyers. You have nothing, Nora said, pulling free. Elise gave us everything. The insurance fraud, the cargo manifests, the murder conspiracy. It's all documented. Elise. Victor's face went purple. That little. That brave woman who saved my life. Nora finished. Just like she couldn't save her sister from someone exactly like you. The door burst open. Not state police, not yet, but Imogen, her perfect composure finally cracked. They're here. The real police, not Klein's people. Someone tipped them off about the murder plot. I did, Nora said simply. This afternoon. They've been listening to everything through my wire. Graham made one last desperate move, shoving Nora toward the balcony railing. But she was ready, had been ready since that night on River Road. She sidestepped, using his momentum against him. He hit the railing hard, teetering for a terrifying moment before Darian pulled him back. No, Nora said firmly. He doesn't get to die a victim. He lives to face justice. The Mountain View Resort's elegant lobby had transformed into a crime scene. State police officers processed evidence while Graham sat handcuffed on the same leather sofa where he'd planned to play the grieving widower by morning. His face was a study in disbelief, as if he couldn't comprehend how his perfect plan had unraveled. Detective Sarah Chun from the State Police Major Crimes Unit sat across from Nora, her recorder running. "We have the wire transmissions, but I need you to walk me through everything." Nora spoke clearly, methodically, starting with the forged documents and ending with Graham's attempt to push her off the balcony. Behind her, Sloane stood ready to intervene if needed, but Nora didn't waver. "He said the note was already written," she added. "My suicide note." Detective Chen's expression darkened. "We found it in his laptop bag. Time-stamped for tomorrow morning." Across the lobby, Victor was attempting damage control, his phone pressed to his ear despite officers telling him to stop. "No, listen. We need to contain this." An officer finally took his phone, but not before Piper had traced the call. "He's calling Senator Blackwood," she reported through Nora's earpiece. "Major donor to Graham's company. This goes higher than we thought." But the dominoes were already falling. Anastasia, who turned out to be an undercover insurance investigator, had been gathering evidence for months. "We suspected fraud," she told Detective Chun, "but not attempted murder." Ms. Hale's evidence connected everything. Imogen had tried to slip out during the chaos, but Darian had quietly positioned himself by the exit. "Going somewhere?" "This is false imprisonment," she hissed. "This is citizens' assistance to law enforcement," he corrected as officers approached. "I believe you're wanted for questioning about a disinformation campaign." "That's not illegal." "It is when it's part of a murder conspiracy," Detective Chun interjected. "Ms. Red, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, and cyber harassment." The sound of Imogen being read her rights was almost musical to Nora's ears. But the true revelation came when Sergeant Klein arrived, clearly expecting to take control of the scene. He stopped short at the sight of state police vehicles. "What's going on here? This is my jurisdiction." "Not anymore," Detective Chin said, producing a warrant. "Sergeant Klein, you're under arrest for conspiracy, evidence tampering, and violation of oath of office." "This is ridiculous." "I was trying to help." "Help who?" Nora asked, stepping forward. "Help Graham make me disappear? Help Victor cover up insurance fraud? Or help yourself to whatever they were paying you?" Klein's face went red. "You manipulative bitch. You seduced that mercenary, abandoned your husband." "Actually," Darian said calmly, producing his phone, "I have recordings of you planting evidence at Mrs. Hale's home. Amazing what a hidden camera and a button can capture." The video played on a screen, Klein placing the wedding ring in the water glass, his face clear and unmistakable. "That's inadmissible." "In court, maybe," Detective Chin said. "But it's more than enough for internal affairs. Take him." As Klein was led away, Graham finally spoke, his voice cracking. "Nora, please. We can work this out. It was Victor's idea, all of it. I just wanted to scare you, to make you appreciate." "Stop," Nora said firmly. "Every word you say is being recorded. And for once in your life, Graham, just stop lying." She walked closer, close enough that only he could hear her next words. "You taught me about consequences. Consider this yours." Graham lunged at her, but the officers were ready, pulling him back. His mask finally shattered completely, revealing the monster beneath. "You are nothing. I made you. Everything you have is because of me." "No," Nora said clearly, her voice carrying across the silent lobby. "Everything I survived was in spite of you." The next hours passed in a blur of statements, evidence collection, and phone calls. Sloane worked with prosecutors to ensure charges would stick. Piper secured all digital evidence for trial. Darian coordinated with his security contacts to ensure Nora's ongoing safety. As dawn broke over the mountains, Nora stood on the same viewing platform where Graham had threatened her just hours before. But now, instead of fear, she felt something else entirely: freedom. "It's over," Darian said, joining her. "The criminal part, yes. There's still the divorce, the civil suits, the rebuilding. You'll manage. You're stronger than you know." She turned to him. "I need to thank you. When you pulled up beside me in that storm." "You'd already saved yourself," he interrupted. "You hired me before that night. You knew something was coming. I just provided backup.
Still.
You helped me guard more than my body. You helped me guard my truth. Darian nodded, understanding. My contract ends with your safety assured. But if you need anything, I know how to reach you. She smiled, the first genuine smile in months. But I think I'll be okay on my own for a while. Later that morning, as news of the arrest spread, Nora's phone exploded with messages. Her nonprofit board, suddenly understanding Harold's cryptic warning about the donation contracts, voted unanimously to support her. Donors who'd been swayed by Graham's influence pledged independent support. Maya had already organized the staff to counter Imogen's disinformation campaign with the truth. Elise called from Colorado, crying with relief. You did it. You actually did it. We did it, Nora corrected. Your courage started this. Your recordings proved it. What happens now? Now we make sure they can never do this again. To anyone. The trials would take months. Graham faced charges of attempted murder, conspiracy, fraud, and assault. Victor's crimes went deeper. Years of insurance fraud, money laundering, and 2 other suspicious deaths that were being reinvestigated. Imogen's client list was being scrutinized, her other cover-ups unraveling. Klein's corruption had triggered a department-wide investigation. But Nora wasn't waiting for the trials to move forward. She returned to work, her presence a statement in itself. She gave one interview, carefully controlled, where she spoke about recognizing coercive control and the importance of trusting your instincts. The night my husband locked me out in the storm, she said to the reporter, he thought he was teaching me a lesson about consequences. He was right. I learned that the consequences of staying would have been fatal. I learned that the storm inside my marriage was more dangerous than any weather. And I learned that sometimes the best response to cruelty isn't forgiveness, it's justice. The interview went viral. Women reached out with their own stories. Support groups formed. Legislation was proposed. Graham's attempt to erase one woman had instead amplified thousands of voices. 3 weeks after the arrests, Nora returned one last time to River Road. The weather was clear, sunny, peaceful. She parked at the same spot where Graham had abandoned her and walked to the guardrail. From her bag, she pulled out the glass with her wedding ring, the same one Klein had left as a threat. She'd kept it as evidence, but now it was just a symbol of a life she'd escaped. She threw it as hard as she could into the river below, watching it disappear into the current. Lesson learned, she whispered to the wind. A car pulled up behind her, not a matte black SUV this time, but her own new vehicle, purchased with her own money, in her own name. She'd driven here alone, no security needed, no one tracking her movements. As she drove away, she passed the spot where Darian had found her that night. In her rear-view mirror, she could see storm clouds gathering on the horizon. But she wasn't afraid. She'd survived the worst storm of her life, the one disguised as love, protection, and care. The next morning's headlines would scream about the trials, about Graham's financial empire crumbling, about Victor fleeing the country only to be arrested at the border. But Nora wouldn't read them. She'd be at her nonprofit, working on a new initiative, a fund for women escaping domestic abuse, providing them with security, legal help, and most importantly, belief. She called it the Storm Fund, and its motto was simple. When someone shows you who they are in the storm, believe them. The first donation came from an anonymous source, but Nora recognized Darian's routing signature. The second came from Elise. The third from a woman who'd seen the interview and wanted to help others escape their own storms. 6 months later, at Graham's sentencing, Nora sat in the gallery's front row. He'd been found guilty on all counts, 25 to life, no possibility of parole for 15 years. As they led him away, he turned to look at her one last time. She met his gaze steadily, no fear, no anger, just truth. He taught her about consequences, about power, about control. But in the end, she taught him the most important lesson of all, that cruelty planted like seeds in a storm will always grow into justice. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited, but Nora walked past them to where a different crowd had gathered, survivors, advocates, and women who'd found strength in her story. What's next? Someone called out. Nora looked at the clear sky, then at the faces around her. No longer victims but warriors. No longer silent but thunderous. "Now," she said, her voice carrying like lightning. "Now we change the weather." And, in a way, they did. Laws changed. Resources expanded. The Storm Fund grew into a national organization. Graham's name became synonymous with coercive control in legal textbooks. Victor died in prison. Imogen was disbarred from public relations permanently. Klein lost his pension and served 5 years. But the real victory was smaller, quieter. It was Nora sleeping peacefully, without checking locks. It was her laughing freely, without calculating consequences. It was her standing in any storm, literal or metaphorical, and knowing she'd survive. The night Graham locked her out in that storm, he'd thought he was breaking her. Instead, he'd freed her. And that freedom? That was the consequence he never saw coming. Have you ever ignored a red flag in a relationship because the truth seemed more terrifying than the lie you were living? If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more tales of survival, justice, and the courage it takes to rewrite your own ending.